All right. Good afternoon, everybody.
How are you?
Hello.
I'm an associate member of T3 Trading Group, which is an SEC registered broker-dealer and member of FINRA SIPC. All of my trades are placed through T3 Trading Group. You should carefully consider whether trading is suitable for you in light of your own financial condition. Position disclosure here is pretty much the same. I got out of some of the options that were hedging, like AMD, into the report and stuff like that. I'm also out of AMD itself. I'm no longer short AMD after today's move. All right, so let's jump into the meeting. I am actively trading this JOBY. So I've got this out on the corner of my eye. It's getting smoked, which makes so much sense. Joby ended the second quarter of 2025 with $991 million in cash and cash equivalents, but they're going to be spending. They estimate that our use of cash and cash equivalents during 2025 will be 500 to 540 million. How's this business going to be able to be a business? They're going to have to raise more money, and most likely that's going to mean stock dilution, which that's really what I've been looking for from this thing. It's got a history of doing secondary offerings as well. Bouncing back a little bit right now, though. All right. Let's try to do this meeting. So SPY's up 0.75%, Q's up 1.2%, IWM negative 0.16%. Let me start by saying I could not have possibly been more wrong about if AMD traded down on its earnings report, what that could mean to leadership from the AI trade in the NASDAQ. I could not have been more wrong. And I am, honestly, I'm blown away by it. I really am. I really am. I mean, obviously, we know Apple kind of came and saved the day a little bit. Apple had, some news. Tim Apple's going to be speaking with Donald Trump in a little bit. A lot of people are expecting that they're going to make an exception for Apple to not have to pay tariffs on their products from India. That seems to be the read-through on that. Apple is up huge, so we will see what happens with Apple when the meeting with Donald Trump actually begins and what the substance of it actually looks like. But all the same, I'm blown away by the market strength. So taking a look at the daily chart here, the question of yesterday's high is whether or not yesterday was going to be if yesterday's high was going to be the lower high, right? And I've really been of the opinion of chop has been my biggest expectation with some downside lean, but what I've been discussing pretty consistently is a lot of the rest of the economy and the stock market outside of the AI world have not been doing well. Right? It's really seemed like it's the AI spend, everything related to AI, that is enabling the market to do what it's been doing. I mean, just look at the move in the semiconductors, right? Look at AMD, look at NVIDIA. The moves have been incredible. So if you could get weakness on the AMD earnings report, maybe that is a little bit of a beginning to the end of the AI trade. And if that's the beginning of the end of the AI trade, then it's the beginning of the end for the market, right? That was kind of the thought process there. And look, the first thing I would say is that AMD's earnings were not bad, right? They guided their revenue up. That's great. But very similar to Micron, very similar to a bunch of other stocks with this earnings season, a okay earnings report, an inline-ish or small beat earnings report is not enough for these stocks that have gone up so huge into the report. So they crushed this AMD down today. AMD finished down 6%. Now, I would think that would have some degree of a read-through to NVIDIA. NVIDIA has a potential lower high here as well. If they've overrun AMD into its earnings report and they're selling it down on a decent earnings report, you would think that it makes sense to pare back NVIDIA a little bit as well, just for a similar concept, right? It's very likely, I think, if NVIDIA was reporting tonight or tomorrow that it's similar to what we've seen with some of these other names. It's a good report. It's not, knock your socks off insane. And therefore, after such a huge run, you see profit taking come in and you see the stock trade a little bit lower. I even thought there could be a read-through on Palantir today, because Palantir is a very expensive multiple AI name. With that said, Palantir's earnings report was phenomenal, but the stock is at, like, I forget the number, like 100. It doesn't even matter. 180 forward PE. Some at this point, it's such a crazy number that it literally doesn't even matter. So I thought that we could see some weakness in the AI sector following through with AMD, which could create relative weakness in the NASDAQ. Again, could not have been more wrong. The NASDAQ is up 1.2%, with the IWM down 0.1%. The RSP is down 0.3%. So even in the face of AMD being down over 6% today, we were able to have the type of trading session where leadership is only from Mag 7. Really mind-blowing and completely contrary to my expectations. Again, obviously Apple helps to offset that a little bit, and Apple, we know, has been under-owned. Apple had a really, really big day today. That might help the NASDAQ hold in. But I don't see why Apple going up, because we might make an exception for them on tariffs, is going to positively impact, I don't know, NVIDIA or Palantir necessarily. But it was an extremely strong day for the market. I could not have been more wrong on the AMD thought process. I'm still honestly a little bit blown away that that it was Mag 7 that led, even in the face of this AMD. And honestly, the technicals of the market with today's close are looking pretty bullish again. Yesterday's high is not a lower high. We still could be in rangy chop. We didn't really get back above 633, which was like yesterday's pre-market high. We still could be in rangy chop. But if you are looking for or expecting, like, which I kind of was, I was thinking, my thought process has been rangy chop unless we can get below, like, SPY 620, SPX 6200. If that happens, I think we could see follow through to the downside. But I only think that happens with a real catalyst. And if AMD selling down 6-7% on its earnings report, really important AI semiconductor related name, isn't enough to be able to do it for this market, I don't think almost anything can, except maybe if we see continued economic weakness. But guess what? That terrible ISM services number that we had yesterday, we fully negated it today. So the market today said, we don't care about inflation picking up. We don't care about the economy slowing down. We don't care that the AI trade is overbought and AMD is selling down. We're just going up. And I don't know what else to say about it. It's very impressive just how well this bull is holding in. And we'll see what happens with the rest of the week on if we're able to continue higher or if we are in more of a choppy, price consolidation or not. And that's pretty much it. I was able to do really well with AMD last night and this morning. That was nice. But I tried to lean into Palantir short, like versus yesterday's high area today, as a thought process on that read through from AMD, like I was discussing in the morning meeting, and I got smoked on it. I tried to lean in more into NVIDIA today as well on the exact same thought process. AMD's weakness should see a little bit of downside follow through NVIDIA, and I got smoked in it. So, kind of a mixed bag. I had a couple good winners, had a couple losers that were a little on the big side. One in particular was rather big. And the market is looking great here technically. SPY's closing on highs, Q's closing on highs. We're overshooting the gap fill. And then, interestingly enough, the IWM was a little bit relatively weak today. Palantir is a day 2 to the upside after that earnings report. I don't know. I got to think that this thing is going parabolic and is starting to become unsustainable. But what is unsustainable? 185, 190, 195, 200 before it runs down? In some ways, it really is the new Tesla, I guess, as Bill Kay has said. So we'll continue to quote him on that one. And I don't think I've really got anything else. I lost a little money day trading Apple today. Just got caught in it. Honestly, it was user error on my end. I got caught. I just mismanaged the trade. My trade worked perfectly, and it hit a certain point where I should have had a risk-reward stop out on my trade. Was nicely in the money on it. Was focused on managing other names. Didn't do it properly. Let it go back up against me. Tried to manage the trade. Ended up giving back some profit on it and turned a small winner into a small loser, basically. So it's not a big deal, but it's a terrible trading mistake to ever turn winners into losers. So hopefully people can learn a little bit from that mistake. And that's all I got. I really don't have a lot for today outside of just having to admit that I was dead wrong on the AMD thought process, even though I'm blown away by it. I'm really surprised. So that is all that I've got, and I am happy to answer any questions that any of you guys may have. We've got a bunch of names that are reporting earnings here after hours. I didn't really look at any of them because I was running late, so we could take a quick look at a few of these here. Just use this chart.
Clear winner of the earnings report.
What do we got here after hours? Duolingo crushing it. We got DraftKings out, up solid. DraftKings up solid. Any other major ones?
APP. I don't know why it bounced.
DoorDash.
$60 off its low, but APP.
APP all over the place. Looks like the initial reaction is down. DoorDash is up. Wow, a bunch of these names are up. I'm assuming Airbnb is up. Oh, Airbnb is not really up.
Dutch Bros crushed it. BROS.
Bros. Yeah, so we have a lot of these kind of meme stocks, meme type stocks here that have reported.
IONQ, I think, was a disaster.
I haven't looked at this Bros in a long while. Yeah, IonQ is not down a lot though. The chart's still fine. Yeah, Bros big upside beat. Actually, I don't know if it's an upside beat. I'm not gonna bother looking at the numbers. But Bros up huge. APP is down a little bit. Dash is up huge. Lyft getting hit, huh? That's interesting. DraftKings looks great, technically above 46 too. JOBY is all over the place. This thing should be below 16.
I don't know why it bounced.
In my opinion, I don't really know why it bounced so much either. But I covered a lot of that JOBY into that down move, like a real lot. I've added some back into the bounce, but I covered a lot. All right. Any questions from anybody over in the YouTube from Cyril? Can it be that at some point the selling just starts? Yes. I mean, yes. It's a great question because it's just how it works sometimes. In your opinion, can it start in pre-market at some day, or main session is more important? It can start pre-market. It can start with a gap. It can start in the main session. It's certainly one of the things I've noticed over the years is that, you know, sometimes it's like everything is going on that everybody knows about, and it seems like the market doesn't make sense, and then all of a sudden, randomly, it just starts going down, let's just say, and, you know, the media, CNBC, will start saying things on TV that we have already known for sometimes weeks, but all of a sudden it starts to matter, and the media needs something to point to, so they say the same thing that we've already known for weeks. That used to be almost random to me sometimes. Over the course of the last several years, I've noticed that oftentimes has to do with market dynamics more than anything else. The market dynamics really just control the market more than anything. So, you know, honestly, part of my thesis for the market being choppy for August is because that's what the market dynamics point to. And then as we get into September, that tends to be when the weakness really comes in. So don't be surprised if all of a sudden the market starts to care about some of the stuff that we've been talking about in September when the market dynamics line up perfectly for it. there is a higher probability that it could matter in August than in July, because the systematic bid is not there in the same way. But we do still have a little bit of a systematic bid in certain scenarios, and we have a huge corporate buyback bid in September. In August. But once you get to September, you kind of lose all that. By the time we get to September, based on what I've read from Goldman and from Rubner at Citadel, is that you'll have nothing left from the systematics, and the corporate buyback bid will still be there, but I don't think it'll be as big as it is in August. And retail tends to lose some of its steam in August and September as well. So, we could talk about all this stuff. I mean, you see it in variations of it, like going back to June when Iran-Israel was going on and we couldn't downtick at all, but when Iran-Israel concluded, we were able to have a huge move higher on it. It's like we went up more on Iran-Israel ending than we ever went down on it starting, which logically doesn't make any sense, but then when you understand about how market dynamics work, all of a sudden it makes a lot of sense. Because the dynamics were such in June that this market could not go down almost no matter what happened. It would be so hard to override those flows. Now here, the flows are, I think, like a good bit more neutral at the same time as we're beginning to see a deterioration in the economic data, which concludes with, I think, chop. And then in September, all of a sudden the dynamics can become more bearish, and if we see a continued acceleration of the economic weakness that we're beginning to see, then all of a sudden it gets worse. How well can that be countered by lowering interest rates, which is probably going to start in September, is the other side of the question, though. So, we'll see. But appreciate the question and commentary, Cyril. From Apex Joy on the YouTube, do you think buying Snap after the earnings report dip and sell before the next report date is a good strategy? So it's interesting that you would say that about Snap specifically. Snap, so as a general rule, the strategy that you're describing I do not like, which basically means, if an earnings report comes out and it's bad and the stock goes down, I'm going to buy it and I'm going to hold it for the whole quarter until the next report. It seems to me very, very random. Every instance in which you get a big gap down from an earnings report that gets bought back up, you're probably going to get even more instances of a big gap down from an earnings report that eventually lead to the stock going even lower because there's a deterioration in the company. That's why it gapped down on the report to begin with. But you mentioned it specifically with Snap. And I've been trading Snap with kind of my cash flow strategy that I've discussed in previous meetings for a really, really long time now. I've endured bad earnings gap down after bad earnings report gap down, one after the next, after the next, after the next. And there has been a very, very consistent pattern with Snap. It gaps down on the earnings report, it kind of slowly grinds up for the entirety of the quarter, and then it gaps down on the earnings report, rinse and repeat, over and over and over again. It's really been similar. It's happened so often. I assume that this is the last earnings report right here. Gap down from, 9.25 to a low of 743, worked its way all the way back up. Just did the exact same thing on this quarter. If you scroll back, there's just many quarters of it doing that. One or two where you had gap ups, but for the most part it was down and down and down on a lot of this stuff on the reports, and then gets bought back after. So I don't know, Apex Joy. I'm gonna say, generally speaking, it's not a strategy that I would advise. With Snap, it's happened and worked many times in the past. I think it could happen and work this time again as well, just because I personally did not think that, given where Snap was into the report and given the report, I didn't think that the stock belonged down 20% on that. I could very easily be wrong. I'm wrong all the time, but it seemed like a dramatic gap down to me on a company that always misses earnings reports and actually beat on the guidance. I didn't think that the report was horrible, but I also didn't think it was a situation like it is with like AMD or some of these other names where Amazon, where they're reporting pretty good reports, but the stock is up so massive into it that they're selling down on it. This is a situation where the stock's not up at all, and the report wasn't as bad as it normally is, I actually wouldn't have been surprised to see Snap trade around flat on that report. But, you know, they sold it down 20% because that's how Snap rolls. So, again, not a strategy that I would advise, but it's interesting that you've noted that with Snap, because I've noted that myself as well. It's been very common for this stock. All right, guys, anything else? All right, we'll wrap it up there. Have a great night.
Thank you, Derrick. Great job.
See you all tomorrow.